Words of wisdom. Practice. Talks, verses, and answers to questions by Master Shen Hua. Question by disciple. What is the primary purpose of meditation? Answer by the Master. Meditation has many advantages. Whether we study, work, or take care of the house, daily meditation increases our concentration, lessens the pressures of life, and increases our physical health. If we honestly want to develop our wisdom and become liberated, then we should meditate regularly. We must be committed to meditation so that in the long run we will be able to transcend the cycle of birth and death. Poem by the Master. Don't be apart from this. Moving or still, awake or asleep, don't be apart from this. If you depart from this, then you've gone amiss. Seize the time and meditate. The basic rule in Chan meditation is to let your eyes contemplate your nose, let your nose contemplate your mouth, let your mouth contemplate your mind. This allows us to control the monkey of the mind and rein in the wild horse of our thoughts so that they stop running outside seeking things. As we sit in the meditation hall, we must not stare from left to right, because if we gaze all around, then our mind will wander outside, and we won't be able to investigate Chan meditation. Please pay heed to this point, everyone. The time in the meditation retreat is extremely valuable. You could say that there is not a second to lose. We must seize the time and investigate meditation, because only through this investigation can we attain wisdom. Cultivators of the way should not treat their skin bags of a body as a treasure. Only people who are free of this idea can apply effort in cultivating the way. If we treat our body as a precious thing, then we will become its slave and serve its whims all day long. Therefore, genuine cultivators treat the body as a stinking skin bag, and they do not prize it highly. Valuing the body is an obstacle to cultivation. We should merely borrow the false to cultivate what is true, and see it just as an expedient means. Most meditators have two problems: restlessness and torpor. That is, if they aren't indulging in idle thinking, they'll be dozing off. Those who know how to work hard, however, will be concentrating their energy on their inquiry. They will absolutely not be sleeping. The key to meditation is to investigate the meditation topic in thought after thought. There's a saying, after long-term investigation, you will naturally attain enlightenment. Keep searching until the mountains vanish and the rivers disappear, and then, beyond the shadows of willows and vivid blossoms, another village appears. You arrive at a whole new place. You gain an awakening. Someone says, I've been practicing so long, why haven't I become enlightened? You haven't been able to endure all kinds of suffering with only the wish to become enlightened. You should realize enlightenment comes from the accumulation of merit and virtue. In time, your merit and virtue will become full, and you will naturally attain enlightenment. Tips on Chan meditation. A verse by Master Hua. Be innocent and buoyant, free of improper thoughts. Tame the mind. Let go of things. That's the essential clue. When earth melts away and dualities are gone, Empty space is shattered. Discriminations cease. Your magic light shines by itself, illumining the universe. The wisdom pearl is in your grasp. Guard the Mani jewel, for it is neither defiled nor pure, and does not come and go. When the pulse stops and thoughts cease, the madness ends. Patience with states. When we sit in meditation, it may feel as if we were being beaten. Our legs may hurt, just as if someone were taking a club to them. And yet we should still bear the pain. Don't put your legs down. If you can keep from putting your legs down and can sit through the pain for an hour or 2 or even 3, then your skill will develop. And there are a lot of experiences which can occur when our skill becomes well developed. Sometimes our entire body will feel cold or hot, or a whole body will move. It moves involuntarily. Such movement indicates that the pulse of blood in our veins and arteries is penetrating. Sometimes we will find ourselves blinking rapidly, a dozen or more times, again, quite involuntarily. Such states as these will occur. Perhaps certain parts of our body will suddenly move, or perhaps while we're sitting, our tongue will slip down our throat. It will go back in itself, and at that time, the breath will no longer go in and out. So, your tongue slips down your throat. What are you going to do about that? How will you ever be able to eat again? You won't even know taste again, will you? Well, you need not be afraid. When your tongue goes down your throat and your breath is cut off, your inner breath takes over. And when you have progressed in meditation to a certain point, your tongue will come back up by itself, and it will naturally return to position and will fold back up on the roof of your mouth. You will then have to swallow a lot of saliva, more than the usual amount. It will be a sweet dew that descends. There are many states such as these, too numerous to mention. Why don't you have any states? Because you sit a little and it starts to hurt and you start to think about it. Such pain, I can't wait for the bell. You shouldn't have to think of the bell. You should have patience. Don't fear the pain. You should be determined to break through that gate. And if you are like that, there will be a way to do it. It's not that with the first bit of pain, you can't take it. You can't bear it. You have to definitely bear what cannot be borne. You have to endure what cannot be endured. If you can merely sit in full lotus, the merit from just sitting is inconceivable. It's very easy to enter samadhi when you sit in full lotus, and it's also easy to increase your wisdom. When you sit in full lotus, just that is the precepts. Just that is samadhi. Sitting in full lotus is just the power of wisdom. Full lotus increases all kinds of merit and virtue. Question. So, how do we cultivate? Answer by the Master. You should cultivate according to your ability, doing what you can and not forcing yourself into doing what you can't. Discontent and dependence. In the Chan Hall, walking subdues the body and sitting subdues the mind. The body stays healthy. The mind is free of random thoughts. When our body is strong and healthy, then we can do whatever we want to do. When our mind is free of random thinking, then it can be concentrated. When our mind is concentrated, our nature is in samadhi. When the nature is in samadhi, demons are subdued, and we are happy every day. When random thoughts do not arise, then we are peaceful, no matter where we are. If our mind isn't concentrated, then we can't subdue the demons. But if our mind is concentrated, then there are no demons at all. Gluttonous demons are no longer gluttonous. Lazy demons are no longer lazy. Heavenly demons lose their celestial stance, and earthly demons lose their earthiness. Human demons no longer have human form. A concentrated mind can subdue internal and external demons. Having done that, then we will experience ongoing bliss. Not a day passes when we're not happy. If our random thoughts cease, then our mind will be as still water. The mind will be as water that has no waves. Why do we experience discontent, thinking that when we are here, it would be better to be there, and when we are there, it would be better to be here? We have allowed our random thoughts to control us. That's what makes us feel dissatisfied with the way things are. An old saying expresses this discontent. Standing on this mountain, we notice that yonder mountain is taller. After we've scaled yonder mountain, we still want to stand on tiptoe. Why are we discontent? We haven't developed the skill to subdue our bodies and our minds. When we run around the Chan Hall, some people take it as a race to see who's going to come in first. However, from the way I see it, everybody in the Chan Hall is first, because we are running in a circle. From where I stand, I'm first, and from where you stand, you're first. From each person's perspective, each gets to be first. But that kind of being first is superficial. Who is truly first? Whoever runs right to enlightenment is the one who is truly first. Running in the Chan Hall is not a track meet where the emphasis is on who finishes in first place. We are interested in who will be the first to wake up. When we run in the Chan Hall, we want to run right to enlightenment. The goal of our Olympic Games is to become enlightened. If we don't become enlightened, it makes no difference how fast we run. We still won't be a winner. We have to truly awaken to become a winner. Whoever becomes enlightened is number one. Whoever doesn't become enlightened comes in second. Those of you who want to be first should hurry up and become enlightened. You might say, well, how does one become enlightened? How? You do that by being reliable and diligent in your cultivation. Be dependable in your investigation of Chan meditation. Be dependable in your sitting meditation. That means that we should not allow random thoughts to arise when we're sitting, nor should we depend on things. What is an example of depending on things? It's when you say something like, now I'm going to investigate Chan, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are going to bring about my awakening. They are going to help me become enlightened. Or you say, I'm going to meet a wise advisor who will teach me how to become enlightened. Or perhaps you say, if I believe in a certain person, he will teach me to become enlightened. All of those views are erroneous. You won't get enlightened that way. You are fundamentally mistaken. Why? It's because you're depending on something. You're depending on someone to teach you to become enlightened. How is that possible? If someone could teach you how to become enlightened, that would be like someone else is eating, making you full. That would be impossible. When someone else eats, you don't get full. Becoming enlightened is the same way. The most that a wise advisor can do is tell you how to cultivate, how to sit in meditation. Although that is pointing out the way to you, it's still necessary for you to walk down the road yourself. Life is but a dream, death a dream as well. When dreaming, we enjoy glory and wealth. Upon awakening, we are as poor as ever. Day in and day out, we dream on, unaware that dreams pass in a flash. If we don't awake from this dream, then we've dreamt it all in vain. That was a verse by Master Hua. Sudden and gradual share a common goal. Great Master Shen Xiu composed a verse that says, "The body is a Bodhi tree, the mind a bright mirror stand. Time and again, wipe it clean. Do not let dust alight." Those of us who wish to become Buddhas must rely on the false to cultivate the true. We have to apply effort using our physical bodies as the vehicle. Our physical body is a false combination of the four elements: earth, fire, water, and air. Our bones, ligaments, muscles, and joints, the hard components in our bodies, belong to the element earth. Our saliva, mucus, and so forth belong to the element water. The warmth in our bodies belongs to the element fire, and the breath in our bodies belongs to the element air. The body is a false combination of those four elements. However, within our bodies there resides yet another thing, the Buddha nature. If that nature is cultivated to perfection, we can become Buddhas. If we don't know how to cultivate that nature, then in the future we may well become ghosts. The human body is like a chemistry laboratory. The result of the chemical process of cultivation depends on what kinds of ingredients we put in. If the ingredients we use in cultivation are not pure, then the chemical result will be spoiled. Basically, the Buddha nature should be able to control the physical body, but sometimes our bodies do not want to follow the rules. They become disobedient and engage in all kinds of improper actions. We try to teach our bodies to cultivate, but they don't like it. If someone allows his body not to cultivate, then it's delighted. You try to teach your body to be patient, and it feels that it is very difficult. But if you teach it to blow up, it would find that very easy. To bring up another analogy that further illustrates this point, if you tell most young men and women to cultivate the way or leave the home life, they will be dead set against the idea. But if you urge them to become a close boyfriend or girlfriend, they'll be delighted at the prospect. The Buddha nature abides in our human bodies, much like people dwelling in their houses. Just as a house needs to be built with earth, wood, water, and fire, so too our bodies are the same way. What is the purpose of a house? It's a place for people to live in. If all the inhabitants move out, a house will very quickly become run down and come to ruin. Likewise, at the time of death, after the Buddha nature leaves our human bodies, our bodies start to stink and rot. Earth, water, fire, and air each return to their origins. When the Buddha nature arrives in a physical body, a person becomes endowed with consciousness and efficacy. But when the Buddha nature leaves the body, then the four elements return to their natural source, and the human life force is lost. However, if we want to cultivate and realize Buddhahood, we have to rely on this body, which is a false union of the four elements. This body can help the Buddha nature. For this reason, Great Master Shunsho wrote his verse. The body is a Bodhi tree. Bodhi means enlightenment to the way. Our body is like the tree of enlightenment. The mind is a bright mirror stand. Basically, this Buddha nature cannot be seen. However, we attempt to describe it, comparing it to a bright mirror stand. Time and again, wipe it clean. At all times, we have to keep our Buddha nature shining and pure. Do not let dust alight. We must not allow ourselves to be covered over by filth. This verse represents the method of gradual enlightenment. Having not yet become enlightened, we have to cultivate gradually, in successive stages, going through all the necessary steps along the way. We can't push ahead saying, all I have to do is sit for a split second and then I'm going to get enlightened. That's called wild fox Chan. Only something devious would yield such weird and outlandish results, such as instantaneous enlightenment. People who truly apply effort do not have scattered minds. Instead, they remain in unmoving thusness, and at all times they never forget to work hard. We've already mentioned this. Place your tongue on the roof of your mouth when you are sitting in Chan meditation, and if there is saliva, swallow it. This saliva can regulate the internal mechanism of your body and is able to cure many illnesses. It's called sweet dew water. It can nourish our Dharma body's wisdom life. Above, we have finished explaining Great Master Shensho's verse. Now, let us look at the sixth patriarch Huineng's verse. Bodhi is basically not a tree, and the bright mirror is not a stand. Originally, there's not one thing, so how could dust alight? Bodhi is basically not a tree, because the Venerable Sixth Patriarch was someone who had become enlightened suddenly. He understood the basic substance, and therefore he insisted that enlightenment to the path isn't a tree. Enlightenment cannot be confined to something with a tangible shape or form. And the bright mirror is not a stand. The bright mirror, of course, is an analogy for the brightness of the Buddha nature. But this Buddha nature is not a mirror stand. Originally, there's not one thing. The Buddha nature is completely devoid of anything. It is spotlessly clean. So how could dust alight? The two verses represent the two methods of sudden and gradual enlightenment. However, they are mutually aiding and interpenetrating. They do not oppose each other. Do not mistakenly say that Great Master Shensho's verse was wrong and that only the Venerable Sixth Patriarch's verse was right. In actuality, the two verses are simply describing two stages that all meditators must traverse. In the end, they share a common goal. Question: why are there sicknesses? Answer by the Master: because people are unhappy. As it is said, since times of old, immortals have had no other elixir except to always be happy and never be sad. This is the secret of a healthy body and mind. 7 emotions and 10 injuries. Let's talk about the 7 emotions, which are happiness, rage, grief, fear, love, hate, and desire. When these 7 emotions are used inappropriately, they have a harmful effect on people. If used correctly, they do not have a harmful effect, but they don't bring any great benefits either. Therefore, cultivators must learn to control their emotions and not let emotions overpower them. So what are these 7 emotions, and how do they harm people? 1. Happiness. If people experience too much elation, that can be harmful because too much joy always brings sorrow in the end. Extreme happiness is quickly supplanted by grief. Too much happiness also hurts the heart. It can cause heart trouble. 2. Rage. Too much anger is also harmful. Of course, a little bit won't hurt, but if our anger is too great, or if we get angry too often, then our system cannot take that. Too much anger will hurt the liver. People can get a liver malady from losing their tempers too often. 3. Grief. Sometimes people indulge in excessive grief and cry too much. That can hurt their lungs. 4. Fear. If people experience too much terror, they will be injured by it. Fear hurts the gallbladder. 5. Love. Don't think that emotional love is such a good thing. Love really hurts the spirit. 6. Hate. Intense dislike is also harmful. We shouldn't indulge in emotional love, and we also shouldn't indulge in loathing. Too much loathing can cause psychological aberrations. A person can become mentally deranged or go crazy. 7. Desire. Desire means excessive craving for anything whatsoever. Too much desire will hurt the spleen. These 7 emotions can bring about these 7 injurious effects. Therefore, cultivators must learn moderation. Confucius put it well when he said, "Before happiness, rage, grief, and joy arise, the middle abides." Should these emotions be tempered by moderation, harmony abides. The middle is the basis of heaven and earth. Harmony is the way that penetrates heaven and earth. Before any of the 7 emotions arise, one's mind is in a state of equilibrium, stasis. Should any of these 7 emotions arise, we need to take care that they be tempered by moderation. One should only experience these emotions in the proper amount, not too much and not too little. In that way, one attains harmony. The middle way is the origin, the fundamental basis of everything in the universe. Harmony is the path that penetrates everything in heaven and earth. Therefore, cultivators should take care never to overindulge in the 7 emotions. Aside from the 7 emotions, there are also 10 kinds of injuries that cultivators should be aware of, and they are: 1. Too much walking injures the sinews. If you walk for a long time without resting, it can injure your sinews, muscles, and ligaments. 2. Too much standing injures the bones. On the other hand, if you remain stationary, standing in one place for a very long time, you can in turn injure your bones. 3. Too much sitting injures the blood. This type of sitting refers to ordinary sitting, as in the workplace, for a long time without getting up to exercise. Meditation does not fall under this category of sitting. Sitting for a long time can injure your blood. 4. Too much sleeping injures the pulse. You shouldn't think that a lot of sleep is necessarily a good thing because it can harm your pulse. 5. Too much listening injures one's vitality. If you're always intent on listening to this and listening to that, your energy and vitality get depleted. 6. Too much looking injures the spirit. Too much seeing, for example, too much reading is also dangerous. Reading continually without rest to the point that your eyes get so tired you can't even pry them open will lead to injuring your spirit. Too much talking injures the breath. There's a saying, opening our mouths causes our energy and breath to disperse. Wagging our tongues will surely create disputes about rights and wrongs. So, talking too much can hurt your breath. 8. Too much eating injures the heart. If you overeat, you can strain your heart. People who regularly stuff themselves are more prone to get heart diseases for that reason. 9. Too much thinking injures the spleen. People who think all the time so that their thoughts race madly and shift all over the place will harm their spleens. At that time you lose all appetite for food and nourishment. 10. Too much promiscuity injures the life force. If people indulge in too much sex, they will deplete their very life force. For these reasons, we can see that there are definite principles which rule our lives, and we can't carry on without any heed for decorum or rules, dissipating our very life force and energies. We who cultivate the way must pay special attention to the principles that accord with heaven and earth. Question: how do we eliminate our bad habits? Answer by the Master: getting rid of bad habits is like shaving off the skin of pineapples. It's useless to cut away only the surface. The thorns that are in the pineapples need to be gouged out and tossed as well. It's just a matter of time. Sitting in meditation is like pulling silk out of a cocoon. What do I mean? Ordinarily, we are like a silkworm that spins a cocoon around itself. We are wrapped up in and bound by our 7 emotions: happiness, anger, sorrow, fear, love, hate, and desire, and the 5 desires: wealth, sex, fame, food, and sleep. Although we cannot completely sever our 7 emotions all at once, nonetheless we want to lessen them bit by bit. We sit in meditation to unravel our shroud. We should try to lessen these 7 emotions by time and again wiping them clean. Lessen them until they completely disappear, and then we will always be in samadhi. Walking, standing, sitting, and reclining, we will be working hard at investigating Chan meditation. Then at some point, we will recognize our original face and will know which way our nostrils point, upwards or downwards. In the past, the first time I read the 6th Patriarch's Sutra, I discussed this point with others. At the time I was 17, and I saw that the 6th Patriarch Sutra talked about sudden and gradual. The southern sudden school and the northern gradual school, southern Nung and northern Xiu. Since the time I was still attached to the mark of literature, I wrote a matching couplet. Although sudden and gradual are not the same, upon completion they are one. Why make divisions of north and south? Sagely and common are temporarily different, but the basic nature is identical. Do not discuss east and west. Sudden implies immediate enlightenment. Gradual implies eventual enlightenment. In their manifestations, they seem to be 2, not the same. But when we come to accomplishment, they are the same. The sudden brings enlightenment, and so does the gradual. With sudden, the time's a little shorter. With gradual, the time is a little longer. But sudden doesn't start out sudden, all by itself. It exists because of gradual. This means that in the past, a person cultivated and nourished and tended his seeds until they reached maturity. And then in this life, the opportunity suddenly presents itself and that person becomes enlightened. If the person had not cultivated in the past and had nothing invested, how could he go into business? How could we become enlightened without any initial input through practice? The eyes of ordinary people who are unaware of former causes and latter effects don't see how a person who gains a sudden awakening actually nourished and tended his good roots in past lives. All they see is that he became enlightened this time around, and so they say his awakening is sudden. The Tiantai school discusses this point. It says that for the sake of the sudden, the gradual is dispensed. The opening of the gradual manifests the sudden. That school describes dispensing the provisional for the sake of the actual and opening the provisional to reveal the actual. Sudden and gradual are an example of opening the provisional to reveal the actual. So I say, upon completion, they are one. When we reach accomplishment, the two are one and the same. Why make divisions of north and south? We don't have to identify what method is from the northern gradual school and which one belongs to the southern sudden school. Those are just temporary appearances after all. How do you know that in the future the sudden won't go north? How do you know that in the future the gradual won't go south? When I heard the elder master Si Guo lecture the Vajra Sutra, he deliberately switched the direction, saying the sixth patriarch was a northerner, and how can you northerners become enlightened? The elder master was indulging in a little bit of banter, but at the time I didn't understand, and so afterwards I was naive enough to ask the elder Dharma master, when did you move the sixth patriarch to the north, elder master? Sagely and common are temporarily different, but the basic nature is identical. The basic nature refers to the Buddha nature. No matter whether one is a common person or a sage, each of us has the Buddha nature. The Buddha said it very clearly. All living beings have the Buddha nature. All can become Buddhas. It's just a matter of time, that's all. Confusion and awakening may be slow or quick. Do not discuss East and West. Don't contend that the place to go is the Western land of ultimate bliss or the Eastern crystal azure world. That's from the perspective of the Saha world. Don't make so many discriminations. Do not discuss East and West. Well, that's the kind of madness I indulged in when I was 17. I spoke like that. I hope you disciples won't follow me in going mad like this, raving like a maniac. Anyone who wants to make such wild statements must first be a madman, which means that you first have to run around the Chan Hall for a while. Or if you don't want to run, you can just sit there for 84,000 great aeons and try it out. Question. What are the steps for laity to cultivate the dharmas of entering and yet transcending the mundane? Answer by the Master. Layman Pong and his wife and children are all members of the laity. If you want to know how to cultivate at home, go and ask them. They're not in this world anymore, but there are some stories. Mr. Pong said, difficult. It's so difficult. It's like trying to balance sesame seeds on the leaves of a tree. Mrs. Pong said, easy. It's so easy. It's as if the messages of the patriarchs were written on the tip of every blade of grass. Miss Pang said, "It's neither difficult nor easy. We eat when we're hungry, and we sleep when we're tired. We should study Buddhism honestly. Do not build a trap for yourself." Alias 3 poisons. All the dharmas within the universe are relative dharmas. This means they are complementary to each other. They work in pairs. Therefore, good complements evil, right complements wrong, yin complements yang, brightness complements darkness, demons complement Buddhas, and so forth. In way places where there are true cultivators, then it's for certain that demons are also not far behind. Demons come to help cultivators, to urge them on, and cultivators can influence demons to become good. Therefore, they mutually aid each other. So although on the outside, demonic obstacles seem to be undesirable, in actuality, cultivators should not pit themselves against demons. Lao Tzu said this, "It's when evil exerts itself that good is made obvious. It's when children are unfilial that filial virtue becomes apparent. It's when treachery surfaces that the loyal assert themselves. It's through failure that success is revealed." The same principle applies to demons. If nothing special is happening in a way place, if things are just ordinary, then demonic obstacles won't arise. But in a way place where people are truly trying to cultivate, then demonic obstacles will certainly appear. As I often tell you, demons come to polish the way. Those on the true path have to endure demons. Someone truly cultivating can reach the point where inside there is no body and mind, and outside there is no world. They are not greedy for wealth, sex, fame, food, or sleep. They've cut off those 5 roots of the hells. On the other hand, people who don't really cultivate are very fond of the 5 desires. So right here is another example of complementary dharmas. By the same principle, people who have way virtue wish to ascend, while people lacking virtue will fall. Some people can see through everything and put it all down. Others cannot see through anything, nor can they put anything down. But when you come down to it, putting everything down and seeing through it is really not so easy. People who are readily able to put everything down, who are able to remain in a state of unmoving suchness, who are constantly bright and clear, who aren't turned by the 8 winds, are people who have cultivated for an uncountably long time, for hundreds of thousands of millions of Asamkhya aeons. As for those who can't see through things or put things down, they are people who have just started to cultivate. They haven't even entered the door. Such people find it very hard to put down their attachments to people and things. They get stuck in thorns and thickets everywhere they go. They feel that others do not treat them well. Even if they clearly are in the wrong, they still rationalize for themselves and do not admit their mistakes. People like that are hard to save. They are like people suffering from a terminal illness, yet who still remain completely without shame and remorse. They act as their own defense attorneys. When we look into this kind of situation, we find that the 3 poisons are acting up again. Lao Tzu also said, "If we are able to constantly chase out the 5 desires, then our mind will naturally be still. If we can clarify our heart, then our spirit will naturally be pure." He's talking about how the 3 poisons can be eradicated. Constantly means always and forever. One is at it all the time without ever letting up or growing lax. To be able means to make a firm resolve based on true determination, firmness, and great wisdom. To chase out means to drive away, to cast out. Desires include desires for all things, for food, sex, fame, sleep, and so forth. It is desires that cloud our minds and make us stupid. If you can constantly chase out your desires, then your mind will naturally be still. If we can clarify our heart, then our spirit will naturally be pure. This is also what Great Master Shen Xiu was referring to in his verse. The body is a Bodhi tree. The mind a bright mirror stand. Time and again wipe it clean. Do not let dust alight. Our minds are as if polluted with sediment and grit. Therefore, at all times, we have to clean them out. What does the sediment and sand refer to? Our idle thoughts. Those idle thoughts have muddied the waters of our self-nature. If we purify this water, then our spirit will naturally become pure again. In this way, quite spontaneously, the 6 desires will no longer arise, and the 3 poisons will be eradicated. The 6 desires are what the 6 sense organs pursue: sights, sounds, smells, tastes, objects of touch, and mental constructs. The 3 poisons refer to greed, anger, and stupidity. That's the way we talk about them in Buddhism. In Taoism, they are called the 3 corpse spirits. I'll introduce you briefly to these. The 3 corpse spirits dwell within our bodies, acting as spies who report whatever good or bad deeds we have done. On the days of Kengshen and Jiazu, according to the Chinese calendar system of stems and branches, they go up to the heavens to make their report. The 3 corpse spirits are 1. Pengju, the upper corpse spirit, resides in the upper third of the human body, also known as the upper warmer. On the mornings of Kengshen and Jiazu, this upper corpse spirit ascends to the heavens and reports on every single act we've carried out with the upper region of our body. 2. Pengzhi, the middle corpse spirit, dwells in the middle section of the body, also known as the middle warmer. At noontime of Kengshen and Jiazu days, this spirit ascends to the heavens and reports on all the deeds, whether good or bad, we've carried out with the middle region of our body. 3. Peng Xiao, the lower corpse spirit, lives in the lower section of our body, also known as the lower warmer. On the nights of Kengshen and Jiazu, this spirit goes up to heaven and makes a complete report of everything we've done with the lower region of our body. They tell absolutely everything, hiding nothing. Now in Buddhism, the 3 corpse spirits are called greed, anger, and stupidity. Greed abides in the upper warmer, anger abides in the middle warmer, and stupidity abides in the lower warmer. The upper corpse has a specific location. It lodges in the bone which slightly protrudes from the back of the cranium, the occipital protuberance, which is the Yuzhen gate. This spirit lodges at that gate, guarding it and monitoring a person's brainwaves. This is the first of the 3 big gates that a cultivator has to break through in order to have any success in his cultivation. The middle corpse spirit lodges in the middle of the spinal column. This is the Jia Zhi, the second gate. The lower corpse spirit lodges at the Wei Lu gate, the coccyx, the very tip of the spinal column. That's where this spirit lives. Those 3 gates are very hard to break through. Besides the 3 gates, there are also 9 worms, which dwell on different parts of our bodies. How do people get hexed? It's because within our own bodies we have these worms, and so if we're not careful, a poison can come from the outside which conjoins with the worms inside. And what are these 9 worms called? The first is called crouching worm. The second is called dragon worm. The third, white worm. The fourth, flesh worm. The fifth, red worm. The sixth, splitting worm. The seventh, lung worm. The eighth, stomach worm. And the ninth, intestinal worm. Each of these lodges in a different part of the body, guarding the 9 crevices. Whereas the 3 gates mentioned earlier are large openings, these 9 crevices are smaller cracks like little holes. It's not at all easy to get through them, for the 9 worms are constantly creating mischief and making it difficult for the cultivator to come to any success. Let's list their functions and locations. 1. The first worm, crouching worm, is so named because it crouches. Curled up like a ball, it is seemingly dormant. It sleeps at the occipital protuberance, the Yu-Jun entry. 2. The second worm is dragon worm because it is shaped like a little dragon. It hides in the nape of the neck, the ligament that joins the head with the shoulder blades, at the Tian-Chu entry. 3. The third worm is white worm, which abides in the Tao-Dao entry, a section of the digestive tract where the solids separate from liquids. This variety of worm is just the fatty tissues and lymph nodes in our body, which are whitish in color. 4. The fourth is the flesh worm because it looks like a blob of flesh. It lives in the Shen Dao entry, the pathway of the heart, and it monitors our spirit. This is the worm which is responsible for heart trouble. 5. The fifth is the red worm because it is a scarlet color. It dwells in the Jia-Zhi entry, the spinal column. 6. The sixth is the splitting worm, which lives in the Xiu-Shu entry, the gateway of mystery. It also rules over a part of the digestive system. 7. The seventh is the lung worm, which lives in the Mingmen entry, the life gate, and rules over the lungs. 8. The eighth is the stomach worm, which lives in the Long Hu entry, the tiger and dragon cave, which is the seat of the reproductive organs. 9. The ninth is the intestinal worm, which lives in the Wei Lu entry at the tip of the spinal column and rules over the large intestine. Some of these worms are responsible for the maladies of different organs. For example, the lungworm is responsible for lung diseases. The stomach worm is responsible for digestive problems. The intestinal worm is responsible for intestinal disorders, and so forth. Above has been a brief and general explanation of the 3 corpse spirits and the 9 worms. They are undercover agents who specialize in sabotaging a cultivator's efforts, making it difficult for him to go toward the good. They constantly urge you not to cultivate, but to go out and play. Most of us aren't even aware that right within our own bodies there are these really undesirable elements. Moreover, these spirits and worms have impressive powers. They can transform into gold, silver, and valuable jewels or beautiful creatures and come in your dreams to entice you. They can either make you happy or seduce you or make you terribly afflicted, causing you to experience depression. Therefore, when you have certain dreams, do not be overjoyed, thinking them to be magical responses. They could very well be these 3 spirits and 9 worms playing tricks on you. Don't be cheated by them. Question. You say that while we're meditating, we should be patient with what we feel. But I find that strange. Can we express our feelings, or should we keep them inside? Sometimes when I stuff them inside, I find that I want to explode afterwards. What should I do? Answer by the Master. Be patient with them, which means emptying them so that they disappear. It's not about hiding them inside. What's the use of hiding them inside? Why do you want to need to keep all that garbage? Forget them. Things that are suppressed only get worse. As powerful as the atomic bomb may be, the power of suppression is even greater. If you're not afraid of exploding into pieces, go ahead and hide them, but watch out. Attachments cause karma. According to the cosmology of the flower adornment, the Avatamsaka Sutra, there are limitless seas of worlds, each with its own particular properties and various distinctions. Our world, for example, takes earth as its substance. Within our bodies are bones, blood, and circulatory system. Upon the earth are rivers, lakes, and oceans. These bodies of water form the circulatory system of the earth. Beneath the earth lies gold, silver, copper, iron, and other metals, which can be likened to the bones of the body. Just like a person, the earth has its skin, blood, flesh, bones, and marrow. Since the earth is so huge, however, it differs from a human body. Within the earth are hot substances, just as within the body there is warmth. We need not go into specific reasons why volcanoes erupt and the lava flows forth, why the earth quakes, or why the substances inside are boiling hot. Just note that it is that way. When mountains crash together and the seas dry up, you could say the earth is sick. When it quakes, it's like a person afflicted with such a serious illness that he suffers convulsions. The sickness of the earth differs from the ills of people in that it takes a long time to develop, whereas people can, in a short span of perhaps a few years, pass through many illnesses. Magnetic fields bind the planets and stars as the gravitational pull of the sun holds the earth in space, causing it to orbit around the sun. One revolution of the earth around the sun is a time span we call a year. One rotation of the earth on its axis is called a day. However, even if you calculate these motions by means of mathematics, the reason for them is still inconceivable. Even if the sun, the moon, and the entire galaxy were to perish, one would still never be able to comprehend the reason for them. And yet, if this world were destroyed, another would be born, because when one world is annihilated, another comes into being. The substances they are made of vary greatly. I'm just briefly mentioning some of the principles discussed in the Flower Adornment Sutra. Although each phenomenon expands into 10, and the 10 in turn expand to 100, 1,000, and so forth, still, the scope being discussed is in limited terms. In truth, there are no limits, and the principles can be expanded ad infinitum. People are attached to their own bodies, their own homes, their own clothes, their own food, and to the notion that this is a great world. Because of these attachments, they create all the false and empty realms that exist. Originally, there is not one thing. The Buddha nature is empty. It is just because of attachments that the stars, moons, suns, and all the worlds come into being. the production, dwelling, decay, and extinction of all worlds results from the karma generated by the vain and false attachments of living beings. People are tiny, like particles of dust within the entirety of space, so there is no way that they can totally comprehend all of space. Like ants that scurry around in an airplane, people have no idea of where they are and what is happening to them. The ants are totally unaware that they are flying through space in a machine. In the same way, we don't know the magnitude of this world system we live in. You may say, oh, the scientists figured that out a long time ago. But I ask you, have they figured out exactly when they themselves will die? The point is that all of us need to deeply realize that this world is impermanent. Then we need not be so attached to trying to figure it all out with our calculating minds. Realizing just that much would be great.